Welcome to our Two Posh podcast. I am your host, Gabrielle, today, here with my daughter, Marcella.
Hello.
Bernie.
Hello.
And Spider.
Hello.
Come on.
my thing.
I know.
Spider.
Wait, I had something new, too.
It's just so boring
Come on.
or something.
Let's
Here
go.
we go.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
And guess what? Who is back with us today is our Breaking Bad superstar, Randy Sullivan.
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to hear Randy's story, what number it is?
That's a really good question.
It is
have been
173.
173. Go back and listen to it. It is crazy. If you've seen Breaking Bad, it is a real, true, live version of that in almost every sense of the story. It's pretty amazing.
And because of it, we only got to 10% of Randy's life story, basically. So we had to have him back for a part 2.
But we did get to 100% of his whiskey.
100%. We did. So I do run a whiskey podcast called Bourbon Real Talk. And so I don't record podcasts without whiskey. So, and I don't like to drink alone. So I brought enough for everybody.
So this is the cool part. If you either want to be interviewed by Randy,
Yeah.
send him a DM.
Mm-hmm.
And he will bring whiskey to you and his whole equipment. Or if you want him to come on his podcast, he still brings whiskey. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
No matter what, there's whiskey.
There's whiskey.
I seriously think we need to do like a remote podcast at your house.
We
Yep.
should.
'Cause 150 bottles you said?
Yeah. I haven't counted in a while.
A lot.
It might be a little more than that. And to be honest, that's actually in the realms that I run in, that's actually not very much. I have
what do
friends
you
that
mean?
have
That's crazy. to me.
over 1,000 bottles.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was that many bottles of.
Well, once you
didn't
get to that level, you're buying like cases of stuff, and you have relationships with stores that when something rare comes out, you're like, will you give me the whole case? And they'll buy 6 or 12 and just sit on it because they can trade it later for stuff they don't have. I've not really gotten into buying multiples unless I tried it and I really liked it, and I'd buy more of them to keep it so that when I run out, I had more to drink. But yeah, I mean, most of my bottles are one-off. So
Does your wife drink whiskey?
not really. I mean, she'll taste it, but she's a wine drinker. She always jokes that she likes whiskey, but she doesn't know how to pace herself with whiskey.
Most
Oh my
people don't know how to
God.
pace themselves with liquor.
Really?
I feel that.
Are you a wine drinker? What do you drink?
I love wine and
I figured-
champagne.
But you don't like
I-
liquor though, right?
I can't see you drinking brown too much.
No.
Yeah,
It
and-
might bring out the demon in you.
Yeah, I don't have no idea.
I heard
really don't know.
it'd be weird to see you in anything other than giggly and smiley.
Yeah, I
Liquor
can't
tends
even
to bring
imagine.
out that in everybody,
Really?
but
I don't agree with that.
No,
I feel like people
you know what?
say that, and
It's
I have drank
truth.
all types of liquor, and all it does is make me laugh, dance, and have fun.
All right,
Yeah.
so let me backtrack.
Whiskey, I've gotten wasted
I'm
on
not saying
whiskey.
everybody. I'm not saying everybody, but tequila's the worst for everybody. There's nothing that makes you like
No.
angry.
No,
Not at all.
just an ex-boyfriend usually.
Dance moms.
But they make her mad without
so
drinking.
I am a
funny.
whiskey educator, and I can tell you that molecularly, it doesn't matter what the alcohol comes from; it's how much you drink.
Yeah.
All alcohol molecules are the same. It doesn't matter if it's in wine, beer, whiskey,
Really?
all that. You know,
Whiskey makes me mean. I'm like, no, you're just fucking
you're
just
an
an asshole. Sorry.
There's nothing that we
Yeah,
can do
that's
about
the
it.
saying.
And
You
she's an
know,
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying most of them have pissed me off because they've done something to piss me off, not because of liquor.
So
I can be violent, sober, or drunk.
I've heard. You're a lot more fun violent when you're drunk. I
Yeah.
got it.
I don't know if they
No,
would
I
agree
don't know
with
about that.
It depends on who's getting beat. If we're watching, it's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
for
That's right.
sure.
If
We're
you're getting
high-fiving
beat,
afterwards.
it's like, what do I do?
I bet you guys, y'all both are just vicious when you're pissed. Like,
I can't.
I know you're vicious because we've heard stories,
She is
but
scary.
really? I can see it because
Gina-
you're so sweet.
Ask my brother when
Okay,
he's
but
here on
how?
Thursday.
Let's get real. How often does that happen?
Okay,
I
but
can't imagine it. I can't even put it together. And I'm starting to
you
visualize.
have to push her to a point, but when she gets there, we're all like, fuck, like shit, like everybody hide. And like if she gets mad at my little sister, Gina and I will be like in the kitchen and we're like, oh God, I feel bad for like I'm scared for her right now.
You turn into Forrest Gump. You're like, dear God, make me a bird so I can fly far away from here.
Yes, because I have flashbacks.
That is so
She can
funny.
be crazy.
I
Well-
can see you being the mama bear.
Oh
Someone starts
God,
messing with your kids, you go off.
yes.
I'm not even talking about that though. I'm talking about just
Like all
general-
women have that. I think she's got some extra something that's
Oh,
that's
do you,
outside.
Randy?
I think you do. I
She
think
does.
you do. I could see it.
She does.
Yeah,
I
that's
can
what I'm
see
saying.
it. Like my wife, when people meet my wife, she's like a Southern belle. She's a lady. She doesn't, she wears very conservative clothes and all that. And she's very friendly and nice. And the other day, like this dude around the corner pissed her off, and she came home and like laid out this entire plan that she had made in her head to provoke him to come to the house so that I could beat him up. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Like no one would ever think that about you. But I'm like, look, my wife is a straight up gangster, like straight up. But
That's so funny.
But they think she's like all nice and quiet and sweet. And I'm like, nah, she's thinking about killing you. And me, for the record. Yeah.
But mainly you.
Yeah,
But mainly me.
Mainly
Yeah.
you.
That sounds about right. So why don't you continue and tell us a little bit more about your life? Like maybe let's start with because your dad was in prison
Mm-hmm.
and then you had to go through college and you were extremely poor going through college, right? How did you get yourself through college?
Well, it was kind of interesting because, running up to college, my dad was telling me, our family, we really support you going to college. And I don't think that anyone in my family history had gone to college. And everybody knew that I was going to go at this point. And so my dad told me, you just worried about the grades. Don't worry about school. Even if I wasn't able to pay for it, my father would pay for it because one of his biggest regrets is that, one of his kids didn't go to college. He's committed to it. So I never really worried about it that much. But right before I got accepted into college, my dad got put in prison. And everything that he had was seized, and he was a fugitive for like a year and a half or so. And so during that time frame, I had very limited contact with him, and he didn't have. I just didn't have access to cash, and so I didn't know what I was going to do. But I'd always thought like, well, my dad said my grandfather would pay for it, and so I called my grandfather and I went over to his house and was like, okay, so I need a check for however many thousands of dollars for school, and my grandfather was like, well, okay, I guess. And I was like, that's weird. That wasn't as easy
That wasn't like, okay, here you
as
go.
I thought it was going to be. And so he paid for my tuition and my room and board, but I didn't have a meal plan. And so that turned out to be a big mistake because my mom and my stepdad, they were doing what they could, but they weren't able to contribute very much. And so when I get to college, I didn't have any source of income because I was a full-time student and I didn't have any grants or scholarships. And all I had was my tuition and room and board paid for. And I was basically living with my girlfriend at the time. This was before I got involved in church. And I was going and donating plasma twice a week. I got $15 per plasma donation. Every fourth donation, I got an extra $5, which it's hilarious. Like I was on my way here, I stopped and ate lunch and I was doing my tip and I was like, I don't care about a few extra bucks. It'll make their day. There was a time where $5 every other week was like the biggest thing in the world. And so to this day, I have a scar on my arm right there
I'm doing that
from
so much.
donating plasma.
What?
How long did you do that for?
The entire year that I
What?
Every other week you were.
Yeah, and it was nerve-wracking because I couldn't afford the gas. It wasn't very far. It was, maybe a half mile away from where my dorm was, and I couldn't afford the gas, and it was too dangerous to move your car because you may not find a parking spot. And so I would walk down there, but they'd check your heart rate and your temperature and make sure that you weren't sick. And so I'd always have to walk down there and kind of like take a breather and try and get my heart rate down and make sure I wasn't too warm. But I knew if I got sick, I was fucked. I wasn't going to have money to get food.
Gosh.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I would go in and I would, do my plasma donation and they give me my $15. And then I had my set things that I would buy when I went to the grocery store. So there were these microwavable 99-cent meals that I could get. And
The Hungry Man or something like that.
no, it was called like Saint Michelle or something like that. It was Michelle something. It was
So
pasta.
super healthy.
Yeah, super healthy. I gained so much weight during this time
Muscle,
frame.
you mean, right?
No,
Muscle. I'm just kidding.
no.
I'm totally kidding.
No, I started to gain that freshman 15 or 20 real quick.
Ramen,
And
did you eat that?
I ate ramen. I ate a ton, and this is what my mom and stepdad could contribute. When she went to the store, she'd buy extra cans of chili, and Vienna sausages and soda crackers. And so I ate a ton of chili. I ate a ton of Vienna sausages and soda crackers. And this is the one thing that, because I make a good bit of money now as a real estate agent. I've had a tax bill that was almost $70,000 a couple years ago, right? So I've made a lot of money, and I've had people attack me for that.
Attack you? Why?
Like my wife's family members that are live up north and they're liberal, and they're like, "You're not paying your fair share," and I'm like, "Fuck you! I paid more this year than you made this year." Like, it's not like I have some extravagant lifestyle. I live in a decent house in the worst neighborhood in Prosper, right? So right. But what I always think
That's
back
a really
on
funny thing to say right there.
is the day that
for everyone, Prosper is really
Very
nice.
Yeah. It's a
suburb.
It is a nice suburb, but it's also I live in the one neighborhood that's not part of the city, so we're a municipal.
Are you
utility.
west of Tollway or east?
I'm west, yeah.
Okay.
West side.
Yep. I'm at 380 in Preston.
There you go.
I'm your neighbor.
Yeah. So every time I think about that and the struggle and the progress, I remember the day that I decided to wash my paper plates, and I remember in my little sink in my dorm room, washing my paper plates as fast as possible so they didn't get too wet, and then laying it out for it to dry because I couldn't afford to buy the paper plates. I needed to spend all my money on food.
Wow.
Right. And so I was super poor. Mm-hmm. And I also realized that if I ever got sick and I couldn't go in and pass their little screening, that I wouldn't have food for that week. And thank God it never happened. I mean, I went in there with some sniffles a couple times. And I'd be like, "You better lock it up."
Dude, that's insane, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was super poor in college. The other thing that I always think about is, I can't remember if it's first or second semester, I had an off-campus class, which meant I had to drive. It was too far to walk, too far to ride a bike. And I was completely out of gas and I had zero money. And so I searched all through my dorm. I rummaged everywhere. I looked through my car and I found 64 cents. And I went to the gas station and I bought 64 cents worth of gas so that I could get back and forth across town from
How far can you go?
I was going to ask that. Did you make it?
Gosh.
Oh, yeah. It was just across town. So, it wasn't probably more than 2 miles round trip. And, you get 15 miles a gallon or so, it was fine. But I just remember when I went up to pay for the gas, the disgusted look on the gas station attendant's face. And I remembered walking out of there and thinking, "Fuck you, I'm in college. You're a gas station attendant. Why are you judging me?" But it made me realize how low my station in life was at that point. The other thing is that, I usually walked to class and I couldn't afford an umbrella. And this used to fuck me up. But when it would start raining, I didn't have any choice. I had to walk to class and I didn't have an umbrella and I couldn't afford one. And everybody had an umbrella. And I remember looking at everybody and being so envious that they had an umbrella. And so to make myself feel better, I would start singing and I would pretend that I liked the rain.
That's good though.
So that if anybody saw me walking in the rain, they wouldn't know that I didn't have a choice. They would think that I was making that choice because I didn't want anybody to have that mental power over me.
That's just unbelievable. And I say that because, looking at you now and looking at, different people and, we just never know what other people are going through. And I say that just because I would never have thought this guy is just having a hard time. I don't think that guy's a fucking moron. He's wrong. Like you don't think anything like that at all.
Right.
But it's crazy hearing, different stories of people who different places in their life and it had nothing to do with you. You were just going through life, right?
So I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, man. And you're just, God, that's crazy and awesome all at the same time.
So to tie in a little bit to their backstory, my dad, right before he went back to prison, supposedly got hooked up with this guy that was affiliated with the mafia. And I had met the guy a couple of times. And after my dad got put in prison, he said, "If you need anything, let me know."
Do you know what kind of, what Is it Italian mafia?
It
What
was
kind of mafia?
Italian. He had a crazy, story that he would tell. But he did have pictures with, prominent mafia members and their children.
You guys probably know some of the same people, I bet.
Yeah. So he had pictures with John Gotti Jr.,
Yeah.
all of those people. And so he would show these pictures, and he had a picture of this house, and he's like, this is my house in Atlantic City, and blah, blah, blah. So he had like a good backstory, and he offered like, if you need anything, let me know. And my second semester, my grandfather paid my tuition, but told me he'd never do it again. So after my second semester in college, I was on my own to figure it out. And I needed money for books, but I didn't have any book money. And so I had a couple of things that my dad had bought me before he went to prison, and I sold those, but it wasn't enough. And I didn't need very much. It was like $200-$300, but it might as well have been $100 million back then. And so I called this guy up, and I said, hey, you said if I needed any help, you would help me. I need money for books. And he ended up giving it to me. And then one of my other family members found out that I got the money from this guy that's supposedly in the mafia. And they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, what, I have to? Fuck off. You didn't give me the money. I had to find it somewhere. And that guy had like this crazy backstory. He disappeared for a while, and then he said he got shot, and then he had like this scar. And years later, he gets arrested, and I read this whole news article about him. And it turned out that he was a dressmaker in New York, and he met all of these mafia people, and he was making dresses for their daughters, and he knew them well enough that they would let him run kind of side scams, like he was part of them, and he had the photos and stuff to prove it because he was around them, he was friends with them, so he'd run these side scams on dumb criminals like the people my dad was running with, and that's how they met up. And when he got arrested, he had run some scam on the FBI because they had hired him as an informant, but he was like, hey, I have to play this role. And so he had gambled away like over $100,000 going out and trying to play this role as a top dog, and the FBI was reimbursing him, and then they got mad, and I'm not even sure they were able to make any of the stuff stick to him. And it was like, was he in the mafia? I mean, like, he kind of played the government for six figures. That's kind of cool.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah. So that guy helped me pay for my books once. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
I'm curious to see if there's there's got to be a tie somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
I need names.
I think they were different. I think they were different crime families. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, I was super poor. I was just putting it together however I could and whatever it took. I even dated a fat girl for a little bit because she bought me food.
My
so
I was not expecting you to say that.
I'm so sorry. That's really funny.
On that note, I want to get more information on all that because you were a Playboy. Let's hear about all that.
kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean,
What do you mean, kind of?
all right. So when I was growing up, my dad was there intermittently, but when he was there, he had kind of this chauvinist type influence on me but I was also fat when I was little, and that had a huge impact on me because
How fat?
Like real
How
fat,
big?
or just like
I have a
hefty?
hard time picturing that.
Yeah.
I have a picture I'll show you when we get off the air. I look like a chipmunk, right? I had big teeth in the front. My face was round.
Front.
I wore these big
Isn't
baggy
it funny
clothes.
how we see it like ourselves?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, chipmunk.
No,
I never
no.
thought of it before.
When I show you the
Yeah.
photo, it's chipmunk-esque. And so I got picked on and stuff, and I can remember there was this girl I had a crush on, and this was a pivotal moment in my life. I asked her to go to the dance, and she said yes, but then she called back and said, well, I talked to my friend, she doesn't want to go alone, and if I have a date, then she's going to feel left out, so I don't want to go with you anymore.
How old are you when this happened?
I was 10. This is the fifth
10?
grade
Wow.
sock
wow.
op, right? And my dad is just about to get out of prison, right? And so this girl, one of my very close friends was a girl, and I said, can you find out why she really said she didn't want to go? Because this doesn't make any sense. And it turned out, and I'm not sure why my friend even told me this, that she got made fun of for going to the dance with a fat kid. So she decided not to go. So right after that, my dad gets out of prison. And he's like, son, basically women are toys that you use and then you throw them away, right? And I had been so crushed that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're fucking evil. Like you can't trust them. And so for, all of these years, I just viewed it as almost like a competition, right? And that was how my dad kind of portrayed it to me, when he was around, and he was around during those years. And my mom, she was just like, whatever. She didn't like the girls. She didn't trust the girls. She was like, I just don't want to hear about it. You do you. And so there was a short time frame there where basically, I'm better looking than the average guy, right? I'd gotten into shape. I'd reached puberty. And I used that to my advantage and dated who I could and, did what I could.
I don't know why that sounds so funny to me.
Well,
I totally get it.
I'm trying to be polite, right?
It's
Why?
working very well.
Yeah.
Very well.
I'm trying to be polite, but you get
So
it.
you basically did what your dad told you to do.
Yeah, basically.
Used women as
Slut.
toys.
Basically. Yeah.
Another notch in your belt.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of mentality. And it's like,
Super
look,
notched belt, very notched belt all the way around.
no, and I wasn't, I probably was not as successful at it as you have been, if I had to guess.
I'll
If
take
I had
that
to-
compliment.
Oh, now
take
we
that
have a
comment.
competition.
Yeah,
Let's go.
there's a competition.
but that was kind of having that mentality, right? And then, in my mind, it was like, okay, well, it's my job to try to get the girl to give me sex, and it's her job to try and get me to fall in love with her. Good luck. I think I'm going to win, right? That was kind of my mentality.
Did you make a lot of girls cry?
No. I actually had a really complex set of rules of engagement
Oh.
that I wasn't allowed to lie. I would chastise my friends. I'm like,
Rules of engagement.
yeah, basically. I mean, we're at
That's
war,
legit, man.
right? So so I'm telling my friends, I'm like, hey, it's cool that you want to date this younger girl, but like, she needs to know what the landscape is. Like, you can't just take advantage of her.
Were you always honest?
Oh yeah.
Wait, that's brutal right there.
And so
The girls
No.
knew
I say that because nobody takes that approach to it. Very few people take that approach of saying, you know what, no matter what, this is what it is.
right. And I would tell a girl, I'm like, look, we're having fun. We can go out.
Oh,
we can
so
do
you
whatever.
wouldn't like pretend like you were falling in love
Yeah.
with
Oh,
them
no,
and
no,
then,
no,
like, hurt
no,
them.
no. I would never lie. I would never say, and I would get mad at my friends. I'm like, did you tell that girl you loved her? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, dude, that's kind of fucked up. Like, don't do that. Be honest. And what I found which was shocking, and I hope I'm not teaching any, terrible tricks to anyone out there. It's way more effective than lying. It's like, if you give a girl a challenge, they'll fucking do anything. It's crazy, right? And so it worked out to my advantage because
Must sell his face right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much truth to what he just said.
Yeah, because
It's
when-
What kind
unbelievable.
of challenge?
I don't know. Like, if I told a girl, say, listen, I like you. I want to, why don't we go out? We'll have some fun. Nothing serious. Don't expect anything serious.
Uh-huh.
That's not where I'm at right now. If you say that to a girl, she's like, I have to make this man love me.
Yes,
Right?
I can see it.
that's true.
Oh, by the way, if you don't know this, like, you need to know this shit, because I'm certain, as pretty as you are, people are trying to use this shit on you.
No, that does not work on me.
Oh,
No, I would say with you, you're the kind of you're the one who doesn't really get. You're kind of right. Or
Yeah,
the one who
no.
just kind of doesn't. I'm sure you get so much attention. You're used to people saying everything and anything, so you kind of can call the bullshit out first, right?
yeah.
I just don't like that. Wouldn't work on me. I'd be like, okay, me too. I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't.
Good for
like,
you. Good for you.
I don't play that game because I think my mom has taught me to be the one that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so much so.
I think in my mind, I wasn't playing a game. In my mind, I thought I was being honest. But as I went down that path, I realized it was actually pretty effective for my goal. And so, then what happened is I met my wife, the woman who's now my wife, and I was dating her, and it was non-exclusive, and I told her it wasn't exclusive. And she would ask questions about, like, well, who else are you seeing? And I'm like, believe me when I tell you don't want the details. It's not going to help, right? Like, we'll just hang out. We'll have a good time. But she was very different from the other girls. So ladies, if you're out there listening, the way that you win is by making yourself a challenge, right? Because
Exactly.
the Playboy that's out there and he's getting his way with all these women, he preys on the women that think that giving him what he wants is going to endear him to them. But all you're doing is putting yourself in the category with all of the other girls. Right.
Right. That is what I was taught basically my
Right.
whole life.
But my wife, who was chaste and said, I don't want to have sex until I'm married, and, put up some boundaries and kind of stuck to it. I was like, oh shit, this girl, she's a little bit different. And so it wasn't immediate because we did end up breaking up and I went away to college. But and I mentioned earlier that I kind of lived with my girlfriend. So when between high school and college, because I graduated early, I went to a community college and I met a girl that was a bit older than me. I was 17 and she was 21. So
wow, that's a big.
well, and that
difference
age difference
that
is
time,
at that age is huge.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so she, when I got accepted to A&M, because we were both going to community college, she moved down there. Like she didn't say like, hey, I was thinking about moving down to A&M. She was like, oh, you're going to A&M? I'll rent an apartment. And I'm like, whoa, I thought we were just messing around. Like, calm down. And so she ends up moving down there and I kind of end up living with her, and she's feeding me and stuff, which is important because I don't have food.
She a big girl?
Is she the big girl?
No, she wasn't the big girl.
She's feeding me.
That's all that matters.
It's an ironic thing to say because she was taller, she was broader shouldered. She's not like overweight, but she was. But my wife brings it up now because my wife met her and she's like, yeah, she was huge. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Like, if we got into a wrestling match, there'd be a question of who's weight. All right, that's fair. So I'm kind of living at this girl's apartment and all that stuff, and she got brought up in a really religious home, and obviously I didn't, right? And she starts saying like, well, maybe we should go to church on Sunday, and I'm like, with all the stuff we're doing Saturday, you want to get up early, and that don't even make any sense, And eventually, she got me to go to church, and it just kind of got in my soul, and I ended up giving my life to Christ in college, and I got committed. I made the decision that she and I, because we were living together, that we needed to stop having sex.
Wow, how hard was that?
It was hard. I was a teenage boy with raging hormones, and we were still sleeping in the same bed and all that stuff, which is not a good plan if you're trying not to have sex.
Yeah.
And so, all of that went down and my commitment to that grew to a point where the relationship didn't work, and she started wanting to, go out with her older brother's friends and party and drink. And I wasn't old enough to drink. So she's wanting to go out with these other guys and drink and smoke. And, I think I mentioned in the last podcast, I didn't drink at all. I didn't smoke. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I'm like, wait a minute, this is, one, I'm not okay with this. And two, I thought we were supposed to be getting involved in church and what Christ wants us to do. And this doesn't feel right to me. And so I kind of gave her an ultimatum and I said, hey, you're going to have to choose. Like, I can't live in both worlds. Like, it's got to be one or the other. And she chose the other. And so we broke up. And that was a very difficult time for me because, I had experienced so much loss at that point and, abandonment, knowing that she chose, like partying and things over a relationship with me. And I really struggled with that. But as I recovered and I started thinking back on my life choices and how I got to where I was at and the bad decisions that I made and how I, kind of used people in the past, I just kept thinking about my wife, right? And how different she was. And it just got in me and I couldn't help it. I started to pursue her again. And so
how long had it been from the first time when you guys had broken up to when you started pursuing her again?
Like a year and a half, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a year and a half.
So she'd been dating also?
Yeah, so she had gotten into a relationship with a guy because she's a year younger than me. So she was still in high school, my first year of college. And she was dating a guy almost that whole time. And when I started to pursue her again, I came home for Christmas break after my first semester freshman year, and she was still seeing him. And, I kind of pursued her, and she shut me down because, that's not the kind of girl she is, right? She's like, hey, I got a boyfriend. And I'm like, so? Get rid of him. But over time, I just kind of hung out in the fringes. I was friends with her sisters and whatnot. So I just kind of hung around until...
Lurking.
Yeah, I was lurking
in the shadows.
I was lurking. I waited until, I gave him enough rope to hang himself, and he did.
How much longer after you started pursuing her did they break up?
5.5 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were you dating at all during that time? Or
That's when I made friends with the fat girl.
You're hungry.
but
I
you
was
ate.
hungry.
I was hungry.
But you ate. You weren't hungry.
She knew where the
anymore.
food was. I'm just saying. She knew where the food was. That's a terrible
Oh my
thing
God,
to
that is
say.
such a horrible thing.
It's terrible. I'm sorry. But she was rich.
But
and
it's the truth.
the truth is the truth. And this was a lot of years ago. Maybe I make different decisions now. I don't know. But it's different when you're hungry. You know what I'm saying? So don't judge me
So
unless you've been
funny.
starving.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I mean, she was rich, and her dad gave her a credit card, and she would just take me to go eat at fancy restaurants. And I was like, shit, man. I mean, going to Taco Bueno to get like a nacho bowl, like this is no shit. I can remember there was a Taco Bueno on campus, and it was like $6 and something to get this dish that I wanted, and they put nacho cheese on it. And I would no shit flirt with any girl that worked behind the counter to get them to put extra nacho cheese on it, because this was like, I could afford to do this like once a month.
Dude,
like
that's awesome.
once a month,
Oh my
I could
God.
get the nacho cheese.
I
right?
want to know if you had sex with the fat girl.
I did not. No,
Really?
no.
So you stuck to that commitment?
Oh no, it wasn't just
Oh,
about that.
all right.
I mean, it was
He
it was
just
a balance
wanted-
of things.
It was about
yeah.
food. Gotcha.
You're
Yeah.
just hungry.
It was about
Yeah.
the appetite.
And
She-
she was okay with that?
Yeah. So she had some moral convictions as well, and so it worked out to my advantage.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I
That's
was able-
awesome.
Able to get the food without going all the way down that path.
Do you
Get the food without going down that
so
path.
funny. Do you have you kept in touch with her, or do you know anything about what she's doing now, or anything like that?
No, so we actually did
Now she's a
remain.
fitness model.
Yeah, that'd be funny. No, we
Fuck you.
That's right.
we did remain friends, but
Probably is. She's like cursing him.
she
still.
even
Right.
came to the wedding.
Really?
Yeah, we remained friends. It kind of transitioned from a dating type situation, because once I started to get back involved with my wife, I'd let her know like, hey, I'm pursuing this. This is serious. Like, we were just kind of hanging out. And
Well, your wife is friends with her too?
well, they tried to be, but then stuff got weird. So once we got married, my wife moved down there. We hung out a couple times, and the girl said some stuff that freaked my wife out, and I'd cut it off
Yep.
for the benefit of the
Goes.
wifey.
Down it goes.
So that was that story. Wow, that was a fucking wild goose chase.
But it all sounded good.
Yeah.
It was a good goose
It's
chase.
really good. I want to know about the part where you worked for multiple companies that always promised you to give you equity and then never did. Did.
So, it's hard to estimate the value of guidance when you've never had it, right? So I read a lot of books now, but when I was a kid, I didn't know that there were people who wrote books to help you learn from experiences. And so, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, those books were, if I had read those books when I was younger, I feel like I might have even been on a different trajectory. But I didn't have anybody in my family who had gone to college and worked in the corporate world and all of that stuff. And so when I was in school, I ended up getting 2 bachelor's degrees in 3 years. Well, it's a dual major, but I have a accounting and a finance degree, and I did it in 3 years. And so, I figured out like, oh, well, there's little shortcuts you can do, you can work hard. And so when I started interviewing, I was interviewing with like large accounting firms and banking institutions and all that. And I get offered this job that was $40,000 a year, salary. And this was, 1999. I mean, that seemed like $100 million a year to me. I'd been washing paper plates, so shit, and so, I took this job, but I get in this corporate environment and there's all of these politics And so I go to training and I'm just excited to be around all of these other like high achieving people. And I remember there was this guy, and you're learning because I work for a large accounting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? And they have like a hierarchy that you go through as you get promoted. And I'm trying to figure out like, how does this work? And it turns out that it's almost, until you get to the last couple steps, it's just based on the number of years you've worked there, almost. And that if you miss one of those, i.e., you're a 3-year person and you don't get, promoted to senior associate, and then at this time point you don't get promoted to this next level, that's the company letting you know that they don't think that you have what it takes to go through to the end, right?
Wow.
And so there was this guy that had been promoted to senior manager, but not to partner. And I was introducing him to somebody, and I referred to him as senior manager. And he pulled me aside and just reamed my ass. And he was like, "You don't tell anybody I'm a senior manager." And I was like, "I thought that was your title." Like I didn't know what was going on. And I get taken out to lunch by somebody who's supposed to be my mentor, and he's like, "Yeah, basically, that guy's been passed over for promotion, and so he's kind of butthurt about that, and you shouldn't bring it up. And in fact, you shouldn't say this, and this, and also, you need to be prepared to just work whatever hours they tell you to work. This church thing that you've talked with them about," because at the time I was like I taught Sunday school. I was always at church on Sunday. So I didn't want to be traveling on Sunday. I didn't want to be working on Sunday. He said, "You're going to have to give church up. Like that church is not in alignment with the career path that you're on."
Wow.
And I was looking at this guy and I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, of course I didn't cuss back then, but, and so I made the decision, like, I've got to get out of here. Well,
how soon after you, like, how far
it's
was
like
this?
3-4 months into the job. It wasn't that long. And so I had done kind of an internship at a company that was in the building next door, actually, the Twin Towers that's right here. I used to work in the mezzanine level of that building. And so I went back to him and I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about leaving." And he's like, "I've been thinking about hiring you back. Like, your internship was great." And so I went to work there. And the first thing that we did was I helped him buy the company from the current owner. Wow. So we had to get all of the, because I had accounting and finance background. So we had to get together all the documents and get it over to a company that was going to evaluate what the company was worth and figure out a payment plan and all that stuff. And the guy's telling me like, "Hey, I'm going to take you with me." And the first thing that he does is just stop working. And I'm this 21-year-old kid, and I'm running this multi-million-dollar a year company. All of my employees are older than me, right? The weirdest thing ever. And I remember like yesterday, I asked him, because we had all these government contracts and we were not doing well. And I took him a payroll report and I said, "You keep telling me that we will make money if we can get our overtime down. But this number that's in the overtime category, is that the time and a half, or is that just the halftime? Because if it's time and a half, we could eliminate 100% of it and it's not going to make a difference because we'd still be losing money. It means we have another problem." And he understood his reporting wrong, and he was working on the wrong problem the entire time. So he ended up laying me off, like, shockingly, just like boom. When he started to struggle financially, I had a company car. I had sold my car, so I didn't have a car. He took my car keys, everything, and I went to church with this guy. And at the time, I was teaching Sunday school. And what's fucked up is that after he fired me and like completely devastated my life, and I ended up leaving the church during that same time frame because I had to move and all this stuff, they gave him my youth group, and he took over as the teacher for my kids. And so I had that experience. Then I went to another company, and the guy said,
"Damn, man, this is crazy."
Right. But I'm just like, when I meet somebody and I like them and they're like, "Hey man, if you help make me rich, I'll make you rich." I'm like, "Awesome." And then I work my ass off. Yeah. And then when it works, they're like, "Get the fuck out." Or when it's not working, And so the next guy, same thing. I was doing sales for him. So I'm like negotiating contracts and I'm bringing in all this money. Plus I'm in operations and I'm helping run the company. He starts like sleeping until noon or 1 every day and coming into the office whenever he wants, all disheveled. I'm doing everything. And I remember I was about to have my first child and I'd worked there for 4 years at this point and I'd never had a raise. And I said like, hey man, like you kind of told me there was going to be equity. There's no equity agreement. I've never had a raise. And I felt like I shouldn't ask for a raise, which is something that, that was like my integrity, but that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I had had guidance from somebody, I would have known like, you need to speak up. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. But I felt like that was like, that was bitch made that I'm like panhandling. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I never asked for anything. So when I finally did, he's like, all right, well, I'll give you a $2,500 raise. And at the time, my salary is like $50,000. So it was, it's almost nothing. I've been there 4 years with no raise. And meantime, he's like buying all these luxury cars and adding on to his house and all this stuff. And I'm fighting with him all the time about spending all this money. I'm like, can we build up a little bit of cash reserves here? Because I've seen what's happened during the lean times. Let's build up. What if something goes bad? And sure enough, he had 90-something% of his business through one large national contract. And when the real estate market started to turn, they pulled the contract and he lost everything.
Damn.
And so
in 2008?
Actually, no, that was in the prior downturn in 2002 or 3 or something like that. And so then I left there, went to work for another guy that had a real estate training company. And I remember it for the rest of my life. He told me, he said, Randy, if I end up in a cardboard box, he said, if you end up in a cardboard box, I'll be in the cardboard box next to yours. He said, me and you are in this together. He said, when I make $1 million, you're going to make $1 million. And so I was just busting my ass, but he had a business partner that was he was that guy. And, if you're out there in the working world and you don't know this, there's a management style where you actually don't know what the fuck's going on, but you just bitch all the time and make everybody feel like they're going to get fired at any moment. And the cool thing about that is that if you get people who have Stockholm syndrome working for you, they'll just keep trying harder. And you're getting maximum effort out of them, even though you didn't have to manage anything. All you got to do is yell and scream and cuss and be angry. Now, the downside about that is that the very best employees that really could have helped you get to the next level, because they're self-thinkers, they won't put up with that shit and they'll leave.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of almost in this Stockholm syndrome situation where, I'm like, no, I've got to build it. I can't leave. I've got this much invested and, I want to get my equity. And then he just pushed me too far one day. And so there was this other company recruiting me down in Austin. And so I went down there to interview. They threw what seemed like a lot of money at me at the time. And so I moved down there, and this company is just like blowing up. They had a real estate foreclosure training product during the 2007 crisis.
Oh, wow.
So I moved down there in 2009, and they went from nothing to doing like $14 million a year just like that.
Wow.
And it's an information product, so the margins are like sky high. The business is growing like crazy. And the owner was honestly just out of his depth, right? I mean, he didn't know how to handle all of this growth and all of that stuff. And when you have that much money coming in, it's like blood in the water with sharks.
Yeah.
And I was an honest-hearted person there for the right reasons, but there were a couple of other executives, because there were 3 executives and the owner and his wife that were there. And I mean, they actually called me over to a private meeting on a Friday night at their house, like cigars and whiskey, and said like, yeah, basically we think the owner's a jackass. And so we have this alliance where we do this technique that we use to manipulate him when we want to get what we want.
Damn.
And I'm like, but I feel like I'm being set up, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'd love to bounce ideas off of y'all before I present them to the owner. I didn't want to acknowledge that I knew what it was that they were saying, because I didn't know if they were setting me up. And also the owner's close personal friend that was his executor of his estate and was going to be the trustee of his estate for his children if he and his wife passed and all that. I mean, that level, managing millions of dollars, I had figured out that he was embezzling money from the company. And
That's surprising.
yeah, and so they're doing, they're probably at this point netting between $500,000 and $700,000 a month. So our payroll taxes were enormous. And so what this guy was doing, he was the CPA, and he would have us wire the money for payroll taxes, and then he'd pay the taxes. Well, to make everything balance, he was having to put extra expense on the income tax on the P&L. But as a accountant, I know what the maximum rate for payroll taxes is. So you might be off in 1 month or another because you had a 5-week month or whatever, but you can't consistently be above that maximum amount unless something's wrong. So I went to our accountant and started asking her, like, hey, can you get me the payroll tax reports? Because these ratios don't work out. She said, I don't have them. I said, why not? She said, oh, those are maintained at the third-party CPA's office. And I said, well, ask him for them. She said, okay. And she got fired a week later.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait a minute, what the fuck? I thought she was a rock star 2 weeks ago. And this is a fast-paced environment. Like, all kinds of crazy shit's going on all the time. And so I didn't really catch on at first. And then a couple of weeks later, the owner's kind of like being withdrawn and weird towards me. We have this meeting. And we sit down, and I'm talking like, I just lay it bare to him. I said, man, I moved my family from Dallas to Austin. I'm committed, man. I believe in the future of this company. I want to get whatever we have to do to get to that next level, because we can't depend on this foreclosure money. This isn't going to go on forever. We have to diversify our portfolio, and we have to have other educational pieces that are working. And it may not be one big piece. We might need 10 or 15 pieces that work a little bit, but we've got to do something, right? And we cried, we embraced all of that shit. And I go home, and he calls me on my way home, and he said, have you reached inside your jacket pocket yet? And I said, no. And he said, reach in there. And I pulled it out, and it was this solid gold watch. And he loved watches like I did, and I had another one of these watches, and I broke it on accident. And when he found out, he went and bought me another one and gave it to me as a gift. So I thought we were 100% good. And then Monday morning, I come in, and he and I are supposed to go to the airport and fly out of town for a meeting. And he's late for the meeting that we're supposed to have. And when I'm sitting in there waiting and everybody else is missing, and instead of everyone walking in, it's just him, and he fired me.
What?
Yeah. And I'm shocked that I'm like, you just gave me a solid gold watch like Friday, it's Monday. Like, what the hell? And he said, I just don't feel like you're a long-term fit for the vision of this company. And that's all he would say. And so he had the HR manager who used to report to me walk me to my office to pack up all my shit. He took my computer and everything. And I didn't have my own computer at the time because I was using his laptop. And I told the HR manager, I said, man, I know it's going to sound like I'm crying over spilled milk, but the third-party CPA is embezzling money, and here's how I know. And if you will go get these records, it will prove it. And he's like, yeah, okay. And so I left, and I didn't hear shit. And about 1.5 years later, the owner of the company text messaged me out of the blue, and he said, Michael was sentenced to X number of years in federal prison today for embezzlement.
Because you knew it, but they didn't believe you.
And so I messaged him back, and I got that sweet retribution that everybody always wants. And I said, can I call you? And he said, yeah. So we got on the phone, and I said, tell me what happened. And he said, well, from the point, he said, first off, firing you was the most expensive mistake I've ever made in my life. He said, from the point that you told me he was embezzling money until I actually believed it and caught him, he stole another $800,000. And he had stolen $800,000 before you caught him. But he was there before I was there. So, and so he stole $1.6 million total. And then he told me, that it was a mistake. And I got to ask him, I said, well, did he play an influence in me being fired? And he said, yes. And I said, this is how he knew that I was on to him, because I asked for this, this, and this. And you would only ask for that if you're trying to check the thing that he knew he was cheating on. And so it was some nice retribution. But going through all of those experiences are what brought me to the place in life where I decided that I was going to work for myself, even if it meant living in a cardboard box, because I wasn't going to put my destiny in anybody else's hands, because I learned that there are far too many business people out there that will say anything that they have to say to get you to do what they need you to do for their own benefit.
And so you're a real estate agent, correct?
I am, yeah.
How long have you done that?
I got licensed in 2008, and then I was running a real estate training company, and just doing appointments nights and weekends. And then about a year after that is when I moved down to Austin, and I was down in Austin for a little over a year. And then when I got fired, I moved back up to Dallas and said, fuck it, I'm just gonna, run my own real estate team. And so I came up here and just started doing real estate full time right at the end of 2010. So I tell people I started at the beginning of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Does your wife do real estate too?
No,
Okay.
no. She didn't work from the point that our first daughter was born, or, while she was pregnant with her first daughter, until earlier this year.
So you got married super young.
Mm-hmm.
How is that when you look back at it? You're still married to the same woman, and how is that going? How do you look at your experience with that?
Yeah. So don't do it like me, kids. This is the hardest fucking way to do it.
Why do you say that?
When you're young, or
Yeah, getting married so young.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 20. My wife was 19.
My goodness.
Yeah. We've been married for 21 years.
Wow.
It'll be, let's see. No, it's just 21 years in August. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a journey. I run into a lot of people that say, like, how'd you make it work? And I'm like, it hasn't really worked. We just didn't get divorced. Like, that's, and I say that with all due respect to my wife.
Sure.
It's just, marriage is hard, right? Having that kind of, linking your cart to somebody else's horse that has a mind of its own.
Yep.
It's very difficult. Now, I've talked to single people, and the alternative is also difficult, not having somebody there. And so I'm not here to tell you which one is better. They are different, right? But for me, when my wife and I got together, we were both of a religious mindset, and we decided that we weren't going to have sex until we were married, which at the time, it didn't seem like that was putting pressure on the relationship. But as an adult, I look back on that and I was like, no wonder I wanted to get married so fast.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but I was in College Station. I went to Texas A&M, and she still lived up, in Flower Mound with her family. And I wanted to be with her. I wanted to be able to see her every day. I wanted to come home and see her when I got home from school, or college. And that wasn't possible because we weren't married. And so, I wanted to be with her and all of those things. But I think the thing that made it so difficult and why it's put pressure on our relationship to this day is that she was around when I was young and stupid and making mistakes. Right? And so it's not like a scenario where, and what I hope for my kids is that, and I think I said this in the last segment, that my son will wait until he's a little bit more established, maybe late 20s, early 30s, and maybe marry a girl that's a few years younger than him, that's not so set in her ways, that's not used to, doing things her own way, and sees him as a successful person that she's willing to join her life to, right? Whereas my wife, she was there in high school when I was trying to be a Playboy and, said stupid stuff like, I'm going to date other people, but it would hurt my feelings if you did. Right? Like,
did you really say that?
Yeah.
That's
And it worked, oddly. And
Wow.
so, if she has that in her mind, or she's seen the 100 times that I thought I'd found, the greatest business idea in the world, and I go charging after it and lose a shit ton of money, which has happened, I don't know how many times. By the way, that's part of the process, so don't judge people for that. But the next time I ask her to, get on board with an idea, she's like, shit, man, that hadn't always worked out in my favor in the past. And so that, I think, is what's contributed to it being so difficult. And you also, when you get married that young, you don't know what kind of person you're going to turn out to be. You know, you may think that you know, but you don't. Life is going to beat the shit out of you, and it's going to change you. And so some people go on vastly different paths. You know, I've watched my buddies that have, you know, married young and then their wives get older and decide that they're in some, you know, weird Middle Eastern mysticism and they're Christian and they're like, I don't relate to my wife anymore, right? Or, I mean, look at me. When we met, I didn't drink at all. I didn't cuss at all. I say the F word like every fourth word now.
I fucking hear you, man.
Right.
I fucking hear you.
And I drink whiskey every day, right?
So
Fuck
how
yeah.
does that work for you?
Well, it worked out okay because we happened to kind of progress together, you know?
Do you wish you was single today?
Hell no. No.
Hey, well, I don't know.
No,
I want to make sure.
Depends on which argument's happening.
no. I mean, they're and I mean, that's a fair statement, right? I mean, when you're struggling, you know, you do think about, well, what would my life be like if I didn't have this other half that I had to consider in all of my decisions? And I feel like that's normal. The good news is that most of the time, like getting away from her is not the solution. Okay. But there was a time period where I couldn't see a path forward, right? Because of the structure of our life. There just wasn't anything for me to hang my hat on to go, I have hope, right? Hope is critical for a relationship.
Hope for what, though?
Hope for a peaceful future together, right?
Are you guys not peaceful?
We are
You said
now,
in the past.
but in the
In the
past.
past. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And so, you know, as if you say shit like I said to my wife when we were in high school, and I slept around and she was a virgin when we got married, and, you know, other things that go along with that, she's got a ace up her sleeve for every disagreement, every argument, and she'd play it, right? And we'd be in group setting in church, and we'd be talking with our friends, and she'd get to talking shit. My worst nightmare was when somebody would ask her if we were high school sweethearts, because I knew what was going to happen. She was going to fucking roast me, right? And what did I get to do? Sit there and smile and take it. Because what could I say? I did all of that shit, right? You know, I did it, and I felt guilty about it. And Christian guilt is a major, major issue, right? And so I lived with so much Christian guilt that I would let her talk shit about me in public. And if you're a Christian out there, you need to do what you can to change your churches, because women talking shit about their husbands in public setting is like the coolest thing in Christian circles.
Really?
It's like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And then the husband's got to be like, okay. You know, fuck that. That is not healthy. It's not Christian. It screws up your relationship, and it may make her feel big and strong and bold in the moment. Her girlfriends may high five her later, but that's not what you need for your future. And so we were just locked in that. And I was just getting beat down. And I remember saying to a counselor, I said, I feel like I'm in an MMA fighting ring, fighting for my life to the death. And my wife is not helping me. She's in the stands eating popcorn and booing when I'm not winning. Right? Because, you know, you end up structuring your life so that, you know, I made all the money, she stayed at home and took care of the kids, but, you know, if she didn't clean the house, or she didn't do the dishes, or she didn't, you know, do the things at the house that needed to be done, there was no consequence. I wasn't going to bitch about it, right? I wasn't going to come in and go, what did you do all day? I didn't say shit. I just came home and did the dishes, right? If she didn't get anything for dinner, I'd go to the store and I'd cook dinner, right? And then as I made more money, I would do things to, and I mean, this is a tale that I see over and over again in Prosper and Frisco.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people who.
Yeah, a lot of people, but I mean, that's where
I can relate to that when I was married.
I spent a lot of time, you know, in that area. And so I would come home and she'd be, you know, probably on social media or something like that. But she was also miserable, very, very unhappy. and she would complain about little things. And so for me, I don't complain unless I expect you to do something about it. It's just my nature, right? So I would just go, oh, okay, well, you don't like cleaning the house? Cool. I'll hire a cleaning crew. You don't like to do laundry? No problem. I found a laundry service. All you got to do is go on this website, hit these numbers. Someone will come to the house, put the laundry on the front porch. They'll bring it back the next day. Everything will be clean, right? And so, and then she didn't like cooking. And I have special dietary needs because I got to eat a certain way. And so I did all the grocery shopping. I did all the cooking. And a lot of times I'd have to clean up the kitchen afterwards. And so I'm cooking all the food. I'm taking care of the kitchen. We have a cleaning crew. We have laundry. What are you doing? And why are you so unhappy? Right? Because at that point, I had gone through the process of getting overweight and then realizing that wasn't healthy and deciding to get back into shape. And so now I'm in shape. I'm making good money. We have this beautiful life, but our marriage is completely disjointed, And so I freaked the fuck out. And I had what only could be described as a midlife crisis. Not the kind like where I get a girlfriend or buy a Harley, right? Not that kind.
What kind?
Buy bourbon and whiskey?
No, maybe.
Start a podcast?
Maybe. No, this is probably about 3.5 years ago. I was about 38, and I just snapped one day. And she was sitting there, and she was complaining, and I started yelling. I said, "What the fuck do you have to complain about? Are you mad you don't have to clean the house? Are you mad that you don't do laundry? Are you mad that you don't have to work? Are you mad that I look like a model? Are you mad that we have all this money? Are you mad that you basically shop all day? Like what part has to change? What would have to be different?" And I remember I told her, I said, "Look, I have given more of myself than I had to give. I'm at a deficit now. And so I think you need to find someone else." And I said, "I realize that you've never had to take care of yourself because I took you out of your parents' house. And I'm not trying to put you out on the streets. So I'm going to offer to you that I'll move upstairs and you can start dating. And when you find the person..."
Damn, hold on a second. Sorry. So there was, shit. So there's no kind of warm up into it. You're just finally one day snap and you're
there's like conflicts are more and more frequent.
Yeah.
Right.
But
it's a normal like conflict, right?
No, this was an abrupt.
Correct. Yeah. So she never saw the whole, you know what? We're done and go date. I'm like, that'd been the first kind of conversation of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Awesome.
And I just said, "Look, I love you and I want you to be happy and I don't want to be miserable with you. So, and I don't want to put you out on the street. So once you start dating and when you find the person that you want to be with, then I'll step aside and you can be with him and I'll take care of you until you find him." And she was like, "But I don't want to be with anyone else." And I was like, "Well, you better start fucking acting like it because that's not how I feel." And so we did start going to see a counselor. Actually, we had already started seeing the counselor at that point, but I had never shared my own feelings, right? It was always me just talking about how she was feeling. I never said what I wanted or what I needed.
Wow.
In fact, to this day, I don't ask my wife for anything. I would not ever call my wife and ask her to pick me something up at the store or to do my laundry or anything. I would never ask for anything because I just, when we were newly wed, me asking her for things like that made her feel like I was trying to control her because of the environment that she came out of.
She told you that made her feel that way?
Mm-hmm. She'd say, "You just want to get me under your thumb." And so I just learned not to ask for anything. But that's part of...
What's that?
I can kind of see that.
Yeah. It's not an uncommon story. I mean,
I can see that too.
And so I just learned not to ask for anything. So I just do, if I need it, I just do it. Right. And I don't have that trigger in my mind that says, could somebody help me get this done? I just do it myself.
So you do your own laundry, all that stuff?
No. She does no.
Maybe before that,
No, her job was to do the laundry. We didn't ever have a discussion. I'm like, this is your job. But, she
take care of the household.
But if she didn't do the laundry, then I would either send it out to service or I would wash it. I wouldn't go to her and be like, hey, what the fuck have you been doing around here? I'm out of clothes.
But she was a stay-at-home wife.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to vilify my wife. I don't think you are at all. I created this. I made this happen with my decisions. Right.
Well, can I just I'm sorry, but I got to interject there for a second because as a woman, as a stay-at-home mother, you guys, it is so much freaking work. And it makes me very upset when people say things like, Bernie, I love you. You just said, well, I mean, you are staying at home. There are days sometimes where it's the most thankless job for many, many days in a row sometimes. I don't think that you did it that way. I think that you actually understood that and you wanted your wife to be at home and you provided so she could stay home. I think what is often misunderstood and overlooked is that the woman that is home with the children doesn't have the interaction with adults, doesn't have the you guys can go to work and you can go to lunch or you can take a break and have a conversation. You're always with the kids.
Were the kids home at this point?
That's the critical point. So this is how it happens. So if you're out there listening, when you have small children at home that don't go to school, husbands, your wife is busy all fucking day. If you don't think so, just on Saturday, tell your wife to go to the spa and you take care of the kids. And after the 5th time you kept them from sticking a fucking fork in the electrical socket and you pulled a penny out of their nose or whatever else they're kids are crazy. They do crazy shit. Your wife's busy all day. And so you develop this habit, if you're a good man, that you show grace because you have learned that your wife is actually busy. Even though the stuff that's visible to you is not getting done, there's things that aren't visible to you that are getting done that are
so
critical.
So many things that are not visible.
Right. But what happens is that once you set up that pattern and then the kids go to school, right? And now she's not busy all day.
So were the kids in school at this point?
Kids were in school and they had been for years. Gotcha. Right. And so once the kids are in school and she's not busy with those types of things all day, you've already set up the relationship pattern of you better not say shit about this. And so as a man, I felt obligated to kind of turn a blind eye to it until I started to struggle getting my shit done. And I'm like, help me, please help, like someone help. Right. And that's when I kind of snapped. And because I've actually thought a lot about what creates a midlife crisis in a man. Because I've seen multiple of my friends that live in, $1 million houses and drive supercars and all that stuff cheat on their smoking hot wife, right? Sometimes with a girl that's not even as attractive. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this happening?
I think I do know kind of sort of an answer for that because I think what you said earlier, and it is very important for women to know this, is that while you do all that, your husband is out there working hard and providing for the family. So you really need to be their biggest cheerleader. You need to be there. You need to give them the attention as well. You need to, this is the rule, right? God, spouse, children.
Right.
That gets very confused when a woman stays at home because your children become your number one because you're with them the whole entire time and the husband kind of gets lost in the whole entire shuffle. That is very important not to allow that to happen. You need to make sure to ask your husband, what does he want to eat? What he's going to come home. I mean, he works hard to provide that lifestyle and that gets lost a lot. And then when you see that, it is a lot of how the woman makes the husband feel.
Sure.
How the woman makes the man feel. That's a lot to do with that. I've learned that a lot. So if they cheat with someone, that's heavier, that's
craziest
shorter,
thing.
that is older, younger, whatever it may be, it is probably you can bank on that woman is making him feel more, better, bigger than you making him feel.
Sure.
That is a big
You know, it's funny, and I can relate to absolutely both things, because when I was married and my son's mom was a stay-at-home mom, I remember having a conversation. I worked in trauma, so I worked 24/7. I worked 100-hour weeks, and I had a conversation once with in a very heated moment, because I just felt our son, both our kids were at school, but I would just feel like she's bitching all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the pressure of the bills and everything is on me, not on you. It's on me. And so I remember one time I had this conversation, very, very, very heated. No, it was very direct. I'm like, you get to live in yoga pants all day long and da 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 da. And, you know, then she came back with I take care of the kids and the house and blah, blah. And so then it was like a day later, I told her, you know what, just fucking go. I'll take care of the kids. And what I learned really quickly was that, like, in between surgery, I get like 10 minutes. I get 5 or 10 minutes, even like in a crazy day of 24/7, to do nothing, to just take a second to walk from one operating room to the next. What I didn't get with the kids was any downtime. There was no turn off switch. I was like, these motherfuckers don't
they're
stop
relentless.
ever. But it goes right to what you said, and I never discredited a stay-at-home mom ever again. But it goes just like what you're saying, when women want to feel supported, they're taken care of. Men want to feel respected, and that, so that's where everyone has validation. But
here's that one lady we follow. She talks about marriage all the time. You had me follow her. She's somewhere on Instagram, and I'll have to find it. But she talks about how it should be equal, and it's like that quote, like, happy wife, happy life. She says, well, the husband, like, they have this wonderful marriage, and she gives advice about marriage and stuff, and then it should be both people. And I think a lot of times there's like nagging females.
Well,
nobody
the
wants
other
that.
thing, though, I just want to make clear also, I know that guys think, okay, now the kids are in school, now that work stops. Sometimes it gets even more, because after the fact, when you pick the kids up, they're more busy than ever before. The homework, everything gets more. They're involved in more. So it is, once again, overwhelming. I don't want to just think everybody think that
I agree
when they're
100%
little.
with you.
So there is that aspect. But yes, the men have to be respected for what they do, because yes, the bills come around every 30 days. They don't stop. It is a grind. It is unbelievable. And they should be supported. They should have help. Okay. If you have time, pick up the kids.
Right.
If you can. If you can't,
definitely.
the wife needs to be supportive if she stays home. I've always been a big believer in that. Never wavered on it. It is super, super, super important.
Yeah.
But it does get lost, and especially when you're home with the kids, and you get lost in the big world of adults. And I mean, you really get kind of desperate.
Sure.
For attention, and you get.
That's what my son's mom. That was the word she actually used. She's like, "I'm here all the time. I don't leave the house. You get to leave." And at the time, I didn't see that. I was like, "Fuck ever. You don't have to do shit. I don't know they're doing this." And then it really does make sense. Do you feel like you go stir crazy on?
I think that
yes, you do.
Yeah. I think sometimes I had one of my girlfriends who was a very independent woman, then do the stay at home, and I think she felt she lost her way, like her.
You lose yourself sometimes.
You lose yourself because you're just, I think she said to me, she's like, I'm just a mom now. Like, I don't have any more.
Which is such an important
job. Right. But she didn't feel like her own identity. So I don't know. Like, I don't have kids, and I've never been married. So I can only see from her and my friends. But I think that if you have been independent all the time, it can kind of feel like very trapped, or who am I anymore?
Well, and the other thing is, when you've done it for a long time, then what do? You gave up your career.
Right.
In my case, I did it lovingly. I loved my kids. I wanted to raise amazing children, but I have also always been very lucky. I've had support.
Yeah, Patrick, you guys are such unicorns.
I have amazing.
I swear to God.
But I was also, I had that support from her dad as well. Like, that was always our one thing. And so I didn't have to deal with that. But that's why I'm so passionate about husbands. Like, talk about it. Like, figure it out.
Well,
like,
and that was my problem, is that I was not talking.
You were not talking, right.
And I felt my Christian guilt made me not talk. The environment that we were living in, where all these wives are talking shit about their husbands, and it's like, you go, girlfriend, tell him how it is. and all of that stuff. And I can remember I went to the mall in the middle of the day to buy my wife a gift for something. I forget what it was. And I valet parked, and I thought that the makeup store would, because my wife collects makeup, would
Wait, all wives collect makeup.
not like my wife.
I think so.
Maybe you, but and so I thought they'd validate my ticket, and they said no, only this restaurant does. And I was like, well, shit, I can either pay for parking or I can go get a drink. I'm gonna spend the money either way. So I go to get a drink at a bar restaurant at the mall at like 4:00 in the afternoon. And I'm sitting there drinking my whiskey quietly, minding my own business. And two women are sitting down from me, and they have, shopping bags piled up all around them, and they're both drinking wine. And then two more women come in with shopping bags. And you can tell by the way they greeted each other, they were surprised to see each other. It wasn't like planned. They just happened to be shopping. Like, oh, hey, Karen. Hey, Susan. And they are embracing and all of that.
Karen.
And then Karen starts talking shit about her husband, Bob. And she's like, you wouldn't believe what Bob did. Sip of wine. Let me move this shopping bag out of the way while I tell this story. He went to the gun range with our son, and he came home with an $800 gun, and he didn't even talk with me about it. Can you believe that? And I'm sitting there, and I'm just fucking twitching. Like I'm about to just snap. And I'm like, you catty fucking bitches. You're all at the mall in the middle of the day in your fucking yoga pants, and you're drinking wine in the middle of the day. You know what your husband's
something
doing?
About yoga pants, guys.
There's something about yoga pants.
I actually do yoga.
Yeah. And it's like
it's when you don't do
you're
yoga,
here drinking while he's out making the money to pay for all those shopping bags, and you're bitching about him buying equipment that he needs to go spend this time with your son? Like, what is wrong with you people? And that's just like this environment that, you can get into, and you get blind to the fact that, there's people around you that depend on you. And if you want things to go well, one, you have to be willing to speak up and communicate your needs, which I've learned. I'm still bad at it, but I'm learning how to do, right? I still wouldn't ask my wife to go to the store for me, but I'm learning how to do. And two, you need to be aware that even if your significant other's not speaking, you got to think about them too.
I think also what's important is that I think it's a problem in the men world and in the women world. Sometimes someone starts talking and it becomes almost like a cancer that runs through the conversation. And I have always hated that. I am a huge believer that I don't like that at all. Like when somebody starts talking crap about their husbands, it makes me almost like, I can't even explain it.
Uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
And we've never, like in our family, she's never done that, and nor do we speak about the people we love the most to people.
No,
I think
don't
it
like
eggs
that.
on each other, and everybody. Misery loves company.
Yes.
So every girl is going to try to. They want you to have problems.
Yes.
So then they're gonna make them bigger and bigger and bigger. So we've never.
Same with guys.
Same with guys. Talking about their
start
girls.
the same. So it's almost like you need to. I feel like I want to encourage everyone to start doing the opposite. Like you be the one that actually talks your husband up. You be the one that talks your wife up. Like look at the difference that can make.
Mm-hmm.
I saw at the studio a lot. I was like, God, all these people hate
I think it's
their
good.
husband.
Yes.
I think it's important for everybody. I think it's important for everyone to have a person they talk to, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
But
for sure.
Because
A
no one is
counselor.
perfect.
it could be a counselor.
Go see
always-
a fucking
Or
counselor.
It
really
can be
close
a really
friend
close friend, like a best friend.
that
but
actually likes your spouse, because
Correct.
that and would keep confidentiality. That is extremely important. Still has to go work. That is extremely important to have that person that you can open up to. And sometimes it's not every counselor is great.
Right.
Some counselors that have their own, they only went to school too, and they only know what they know. So sometimes I
and
believe
they have their
it's
own life
better.
experiences too.
Their own life experiences. Sometimes I feel it's better if you have a trusted friend, a truly trusted friend that will not judge you, that you can open up to, that
Like
will not repeat it.
The other downside,
they're very rare.
I completely agree. I think the other downside is what ends up happening is, and I've been guilty of doing it, I'm very good about not doing it now just because I learned, it's easy when we're pissed off about a situation to go like, whatever. But then what we end up doing is we plant these seeds from our friends about your significant other. And then when things are good, they're like, that bitch is like, and then, although it's your friend, they still have this negative thought process. So there's always something negative they may throw into
not
it.
That way.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that way.
Exactly.
Well, but you should know your friend too.
Yes.
Right.
You
So
have to know your friend.
one of my, very best friends, I talk with him about what I'm going through, but he always makes a point to say like, I love both of you. You know what I'm saying?
Same.
So
You guys go to church together?
I don't go to church anymore.
No.
And we also see a counselor weekly. Like we have a weekly standing appointment. We found a counselor that we trust. And how
long did it take you guys to find that counselor? Because it's hard to find a good counselor.
We went to one and it wasn't working, and then it was a counseling group, so we said, hey, do you have anyone else? And we met with the second one, and that one was okay. This is our fourth counselor that we've gone
That's
to.
important too, though. I find that very important. You just said that. A lot of people go counselor, it didn't work out, and then they never go to another one.
Yeah.
You have to find one that really works, and sometimes it takes several to go through to find the correct
100%.
one. I always am extremely
I feel like
lucky.
people could just go on your podcast because this is very therapeutic for me.
Bring some more bourbon. It'll be very
We've
therapeutic.
heard that several
lot of
times,
times.
and that's it's very, very awesome. And I mean, for me personally, I've been very lucky. I've had a very, very dear friend that has been I call her my counselor. She's not a counselor, but she is my counselor.
Yeah.
She's truly helped me. And we help each other.
Is she pretty? So the other part that it's hard to find is find someone who friend-wise that is going to be. It's hard for them not to be completely biased to you, but it's good when you can find someone who's not completely biased.
She's not
to you.
because she damn loves Patrick.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. That's hard to find.
Rude. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, you're not. I'm kidding.
But,
Do you guys really even fight? Jeez. You guys,
about once or twice a year. Maybe.
I would bet.
Like right now is a very touchy time because he hates Christmas.
Really?
He hates the whole.
Why?
I think from growing up, his family thing, and I love it so much. So we have agreed.
Yeah.
We have made an agreement. We travel every other year. No Christmas. That's the gift to each other. The whole family.
Are you traveling
travels.
this year?
No, this year is our Christmas year.
Where'd you guys go last year?
Mexico somewhere.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and this year we're staying here, so he's stressing because we're starting to decorate, and all of this is very stressful to him.
Really?
Mhm.
He doesn't have to do anything though. You do everything.
We do everything because we know he doesn't like it.
Wow.
So, we kind of have discussions though, because I'm like, we're not going to do Scrooge, or we're not traveling next year. You get to do it again.
Did you guys get to do? So did you do presents in Mexico or no?
No, that's our gift to each other. The trip
Wow.
is. Mm-hmm.
What about the kids?
Well,
Gina,
nobody gets
We do
presents.
the same thing.
Nope, no
Do
one
y'all
gets
really?
presents.
Yeah, because we started looking at the situation, and it was like we'd ask the kids like, "What do you want?" And they go, "I don't know."
You know what's even better?
Because our
Ask
kids-
them if they remember what they got last year. They never remember, but they remember every single trip.
Shut my stomach
Right.
to everything. And then,
Mhm.
how old are your kids?
They're 12 and 15, but like they're not super into video games. Like we've bought gaming systems for them and all
Mhm.
that stuff. So, the kids, they're just like, I don't need anything. I have everything I want. They both have iPads. They both have computers.
Mhm.
They have gaming system, and so we were like, why are we spending money on this stuff? So we try to be efficient. So we know that they want to go to church camp in the summer. So this year we're going to ask my dad, like when he says, what should I get the kids? Pay for their church camp.
Yeah.
Right. But we kind of made the decision a couple years ago, we were going to take a trip instead of spending money on
It's the
presents.
best.
So we went to
It was
San Diego.
really, really cool. We do it every other year.
Every other year? Do y'all do it every other year? Or do you do it every year? Or what do you do?
We try to do it every year. I think last year we went to San Diego. We don't have anything specific planned yet for this year because this is a rebuilding year. We're trying to build up our capital. So not sure if we're going to end up doing a trip or not. But sometimes, honestly, it doesn't even matter. You can go anywhere small, and it makes a big difference to your kids.
It's fun.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like although I can make it whatever it is, I feel like Jet is too young to understand that
He
concept
is
of
Still
like
very
no
young.
presents, right?
Like,
so
A little.
When they're
I
older.
mean, I think that year
You think
we
like
went
11,
to Disney
12,
World,
or what do you
something like
think?
that. Crazy.
Yeah.
what year was
the
it?
whole-
But how old was
I
Julie?
think Julie was that age when we went to Disney.
Yeah.
It's like, so we did that. Like we did a big trip for Christmas. That was
Did they
Christmas.
ask though at all about presents?
No, they knew that was the thing.
Okay, so they didn't
Like,
even think
that was-
they weren't at all like, hey, do we get anything just in case?
No.
No.
My son would be like, hey, and where's
Well,
the
I mean, our family still wants to buy the kids presents, so they get a few things to open.
You know what I
but it's-
did? I think when she was little, I would bring like what something was left. Something.
Yeah.
I did something little, but nothing like because I can go crazy. I know I can.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But I think it's very important to recognize everybody and try to understand both sides.
Yeah,
and
for
I
sure.
think you guys can be. I think I feel very strong about it. You guys can be really tough about we're doing everything and you're just sitting at home doing nothing. And women can be very tough about, well, you have no idea what I'm doing and you better step up kind of thing. So if everyone can see it a little bit better, it would be
I agree.
a lot more helpful.
100%.
You know, and I agree 100%, right? It's easy, but at the time, it's like I think we can all agree we all become very emotional, and I was at a certain
And overwhelmed.
very you know, we all at the end of the day we all just want to be heard. That no matter what the details are, we just want to be heard and feel like we're validated. And I think the other part, you know, the challenge is how do we love well? I mean, like, how do you love well? And meaning, like, do we do something because we want, like, are we going to be pissed off if I say, I love you and you don't say it back? Or can we just say, hey, I love you, or I'm doing this for you without any expectations of something? And I think it's hard to do that. But if I feel like and I don't have this down, so don't by any means think that I'm saying this because I've mastered it, because I'm horrible at it. I always have expectations with most of the things I do, unfortunately. But that would be something that would, if we can learn to love well and do it without a lot of expectation, it would make it to where there'd be less.
Yeah, have no expectations, then you're never
mean, yeah.
disappointed. I have to say, I really wanted to tell Randy, though, that listening to his story, number one, listening to getting married so young, number two, kind of understanding a little bit about it, I'm actually really proud of you guys, like, to not give up and work through it. And because you have such a great family, you have amazing kids. I feel like you have a lot that you can build on. And I mean, it's incredible. So many people just kind of go, yeah, whatever. Forget you.
No, not for us. And that's the reality, is that, you know, you have to be observant of what's going on around you. And what I've realized is that I've seen people give up plenty of times, but at the end of the day, the reality is you're going to have just as difficult of a set of problems in your next relationship.
Yep.
Right. And realizing that
At minimum.
I was just going to say probably worse.
Often it gets worse, right? So, and that's not always true. I've seen people get divorced and move on and be happier, right?
Yeah.
But that's, you know, the reality is it's not without problems. And so especially when there's, you know, kids involved and you've got all of this history that you don't want to walk away from that's valuable. That's worth something. It's worth fighting for. And understanding that, I think, and honestly, both my wife and I are super pig-headed. And so neither one of us wanted to be the one that gave up.
Yeah.
And so during all of those difficult times, you know, it took a massive force to get me to start speaking up and saying what I needed and what I wanted in our relationship. And I still struggle with that to this day. But what I've learned is that communication is super important. So secrecy, and I find that there's actually a lot of secrecy in relationships, because when I talk with my friends, they'll share things with me and I'm like, well, have you told her that? And he's like, no. And I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like,
It's
you gotta,
such crazy as white lies is bullshit, man.
yeah. So secrecy is the enemy of intimacy, and intimacy is required for love. So, you know, you can't have secrets. You need to be open. You need to communicate. You need to be vulnerable if you want to have connection, and if you want, and connection's required for love. So kind of the process. And that's what I've learned. And I'm not saying that I've got it all figured out, like Bernie was mentioning. Like, I don't have it all figured out, but that's kind of the path that we've been on, is to be honest with one another. And to be honest, once we got vulnerable, I mean, some of the things that I found out about my wife were quite honestly shocking to me, right? But it wasn't the kind of thing that I was like, ugh, like now I don't think the same about you. And that's our fear. That's why we're not vulnerable. Why we're unwilling to be vulnerable, because we're worried about what the consequences of that vulnerability are. And I want to encourage women out there, if you'll be vulnerable with your husband and be honest with him, honestly, when my wife tells me things that are out of character or shocking, I feel more connected to her, right? Because I know that she's being honest and open. And trusting. Yeah. So anyway.
On that note, we're going to end the show, and we thank everyone for listening. Thank you for coming back, Randy. That was awesome.
Awesome for sure.
Marriage advice. Relationship advice.
No shit. Don't get married early, guys. 35 is the... I'm just kidding.
It works.
No. I totally hear you. I'm just kidding.
No.
So thank you for listening.
No, really, listen to Bernie.